Hi, my name is Tsgoyna. I am a personal life coach, an NLP certified practitioner, and a speech and language pathologist for over 25 years. I love dealing with the brain. My specialty in speech and language pathology is with traumatic brain injured individuals. And I know that we all are a little bit brain damaged in the sense that we don't always use our brain optimally. And I'm here to share with you some techniques that can help really rewire your brain for a much more empowered life. So tapping, it's called emotional freedom technique, and it combines what we call cognitive exposure therapy with traditional acupressure meridian energy points. And the simplest way to describe this is about the fight or flight response and the relaxation response. We have two systems that work in our body all the time, the parasympathetic system and the sympathetic system. The sympathetic nervous system is the one that recognizes danger and prepares us to flee or fight when we encounter a stressful situation, or whether it's an actual situation or just a thought. The parasympathetic system, on the other hand, is the one that says, call off the dogs, no danger, it's all okay. And so what EFT does is help to activate the actual parasympathetic system and call off that danger alert. We so often spend our time in chronic stress, and not the good kind of stress. There is a good kind of stress that is very motivating and very activating, but the chronic stress that is oxidative to our body and very health deteriorating is the type of stress that runs and recirculates negative thoughts, fearful thoughts, and that type of thing. So it looks as simple as this. We start on the side of our hand and we have a setup statement. A setup statement, ideally, as you do EFT tapping, the more specific you can be in your context of what your problem is, the better off it is. And the reason being is that if we can get very specific about something, we kind of liken it to a tabletop with legs. If we get all the legs, which are the different aspects of the problem, then the tabletop disappears as well. So very often when a person taps, they may start out with one problem. Actually, it occurred today with a client of mine. So we started talking because she couldn't figure out what her password was, and she was aggravated that her husband had all of her passwords. And as we tapped and we went through this, a whole other set of circumstances showed up, and that was the experience of abandonment that came from a long, long time ago. So one thought will lead to the next thought, which is at first might seem, well, that's getting worse, but the reality is you are getting rid of the what I call the muzak in our head, that undercurrent of negative thinking that permeates our body at all time without our consciousness. So exposure therapy, while tapping on meridian points, actually scrambles the brain long enough to create new associations, and then we can implant more positive associations to make many more empowered choices. All right, so let's get started. It starts with a karate chop on the side of the hand. So let's just do what I had actually done with a client earlier today, which was her specific situation was thinking about how angry and frustrated she was that her husband had the password and she didn't know it. So it started out like this. Even though I'm so angry that I don't know my own password, I love and accept myself anyway. Now, I will tell you, this seems a little hooey when you first get started. When I first learned about EFT about 15 years ago, I thought, okay, that's really weird. And then I let it go. And then I waited 10 more years before I started to learn about it. And still, even as much as I have kind of a broad experience and wide experience for kind of off the grid kinds of treatments, I still thought it was weird. And it wasn't until I actually met a 96-year-old man who was still practicing as a psychotherapist, who had begun his practice at the age of 50. He had been an engineer and then became a psychotherapist at the age of 50, who was involved with all kinds of energy medicine and in particular EFT tapping. And he really described how successful it was with his patients. It was at that moment in time that I said, I probably should investigate what this is all about. So going back to our tapping, just stick with me and just notice the most important thing you can do prior to tapping is actually take an assessment of your body. See if you feel any pain anywhere, any tightness, any restriction, and note the level of intensity that feeling is. On a 0 to 10 scale, 10 being the highest. It could be a physical pain. It could be just an emotional kind of intensity, a feeling of rage or a feeling of sadness. Rate the intensity and write it down, because 99% of the time, after going through the tapping, the pain or the intensity level will lower and you won't even remember it. Just in the way that you've probably experienced having a pain at one point, and when that pain subsides, it's almost as if it never had happened. You forget that it ever happened. So let's go back to this. Even though I'm so frustrated and angry that I don't know my own password, I love and accept myself. Even though I'm frustrated that I have to depend on people, I love and accept myself. Even though I'm so frustrated that I don't know my own password and can't take care of myself, I love and accept myself anyway. Then we just use a reminder phrase, and it's a tapping point right between the eyebrows. And you might say, this frustration. Then we move to the side of the eye, the bony prominence in the eye, not far back on the temple, but the bony prominence. And you repeat the phrase, the reminder phrase, this frustration. Underneath the eye, again on the bony part, this sadness. Underneath the nose, this abandonment. If that comes up for you, now you choose your own words, you choose your own feelings. This sadness, this anger and frustration. So frustrating. Tapping at the collarbone point. And this you can use with a full hand to get all of the points, or just use right by the collarbone. Another point is right up in the crown of the head. A light percussive tapping, 7 to 8 to 10 times of tapping. This is very much an intuitive process that you will feel with yourself. Okay? And I always like to include, I release and let it go. It's safe to let it go. I release and let go of all fear, all frustration, all anger, all sadness. I release and let it go. It's safe to let it go. Take a deep breath in. Peace. And you just assess now your body, what the intensity level is like. It very typically goes down. In some instances, you might notice that a thought has led you to a more specific event, a deeper level, or as we like to say, a peeling back of the layer of the onion. If that's the case, your intensity level might have gone up. In that case, you tap on the specific aspects of that, and you keep tapping. A great image to include, and this is a technique used by Robert Smith through faster EFT, is the image of a tree, and a tree with roots. And we like to get that image of a tree with roots in front of us. And you ask yourself the question, what happens to a tree when it's pulled up by its roots? And this sets up an unconscious connection for your unconsciousness to understand the metaphor that this thought, this image will die. And this will be the last time that you experience this thought. The question always comes up, how long do you tap? You tap until you get to 0. And if you can't do it all at one time, then you do a setup that says, even though I know there's still some remaining loss, some remaining anger feelings, I love and accept myself anyway. And I'm able to look at this at a later time. These remaining thoughts, these leftover thoughts, I love and accept myself. These remaining thoughts, I'll handle later. It's safe to let them go for now. Take a deep breath and say peace. I want to encourage you to look online. There's tons of free information about EFT tapping. I love it because it's a great self-help technique you can use anytime. If you feel awkward about tapping like this in a public place, you can use very simple, just hand pressure on those points. The most calming points seem to be around the collarbone. You very often will see people just sitting like that. They may or may not know EFT, but it seems to be an intuitive place that we touch in a sense for self-healing. So I hope that you found this interesting. You can always reach me at Tsgoyna.com, and I look forward to sharing more tips with you. Bye.